Representative Gabler.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director Knittel and Deputy Director Warburton. I appreciate your testimony. I want to talk a little bit more about the minimum wage because it is, as you had pointed out, it is a proposal that cuts both ways. And so the question is, how do we cut through the numbers and figure out how this affects people and how this can really have a very profound effect on certain people's lives? And we want to cut through to try to get to the right answer. So I know that your office has analyzed proposed minimum wage increases previously. I was wondering if you could start out by discussing the impact on job losses that the minimum wage would have and how this year's proposal may differ from prior year's proposals that have been discussed, and specifically if we could quantify what the change in employment for people on the lower end of the income scale would look like statewide.
So in past years, there have been a number of different proposals. For 2 years, it was raising the wage up to $10.15. More recently, in 17 and 18, then it had gone up to $12. And this year, as you noted, it is a bit different. It's 12 and then up to 15, and tipped workers are now included. Again, what we found before in our older analyses is that going up to $10.15, there might be an employment reduction of about 2.5 to 3 percentage points. In 2017, going up to $12, we thought that might be about 4 percentage points employment reduction. Last year, at $12 again, we brought that down to 3.2 percentage points.
Could you translate those percentage points into number of jobs?
It all depends on the number that are impacted. I think for last year, it was 30,000 jobs. And again, I would emphasize that that doesn't happen all at once. It happens over multiple years. Sometimes jobs aren't filled, vacancies, things such as that. So it's not all of a sudden, but it's just fewer job opportunities. And that's the trade-off.
Right. I was interested in a note that was on the bottom of last year's report, the 17-18 report. It said there's a table that shows a total of directly affected workers between $7.25 and $11.99 an hour. Employment reduction is 53.7 thousand. But there's a note below that says that the response parameters in this table assume that the higher minimum wage is phased in over multiple years. If the $12 minimum wage is not phased in, then the response parameters would be higher, and the projected employment reduction would be higher as well. So based on that note, would it be reasonable to conclude that we're looking at in excess of 54,000 job losses in a proposal that would go immediately to $12 an hour within the first year?
So I'm just because we have multiple analyses out. The latest one in 2018, I have it as an employment reduction of 33,000.
Okay.
But to your point about the phase-in, we do think that's critical, that there will be less distortions, less frictions if one phases it up to $12. So for example, maybe 10, 11, 12. It allows employers to adjust, it allows them to adjust their pricing mechanism so they can pass those costs on. To do it suddenly would cause more disruptions.
And I think that is certainly a concern because when we throw a shock into the system, if people are unable to adapt to that change and we see these sudden job losses, I would certainly be concerned to think what sort of a situation that may leave people, and the very people we're attempting to help, we may end up actually hurting. And I think that actually translates into a question that I'd like to ask you about purchasing power. As we look at increasing the minimum wage, do you have any analysis that shows what that would do to the inflation rate in the state, and ultimately what that would do to somebody's purchasing power who is making that minimum wage? How far will their dollar actually go?
Yeah, we agree that the cost would be passed on in higher prices. The majority of it, we think, again, about 80%. But we haven't done an analysis on how that would affect the statewide inflation rate. I think that would be difficult to do.
I appreciate that. I think it is important to point out the House Labor and Industry Committee had a hearing last week, and we had two testifiers come in from universities, economics professors from universities within the state. That the conclusion of that was that the minimum wage increase would lead to significant price increases that would serve as a tax on all Pennsylvania families. And I think that's something that we want to try to dig into in these hearings a little bit more, and I appreciate you helping us draw a baseline there. So with that, I'll thank you very much for your testimony, and I appreciate your helping us out.